Welcome back. And now we're going to transition to how to start an edit in Premiere. Now, Premiere makes certain things easy, but also kind of can cause complications down the road. So what I want you to learn is learning how to do it the way I would do it. And then if you choose to ignore my advice and do it your way, then, your mileage may vary. So I'm keeping the first Premiere project that I had created. If you have not created a project yet in Premiere, don't forget that you can use the tutorial project that comes with Premiere and choose, I would say, at least 3 or 4 clips from this. I don't care which ones you choose. I would suggest that they be related to each other if possible. So maybe choosing some clips that are related to each other either by look or by style, and see if that would help. But we're going to start on the Edit tab. This is assuming that you've already imported some clips into a sequence. If you want to import more clips into a sequence, you can, if you have the project panel loaded, you can actually double click in here, any place that's empty, and it will open a window so that you can import additional footage. Now, all of these clips are the ones that I actually already imported. So if there was some other ones in this project folder, then you could add them again. If the other way to do that would be going to the File menu and choosing File, Import, and that's going to take you to the same place that I was before, which is where you're located. Now, I want to caution you to always make sure that you're running off of the local computer if you're going to be doing your edits. Sometimes down the road in future classes, I will sometimes have you work off of the file server directly, but generally speaking, for intro to media, I want you working off of the workstations you're on. That's going to give you the best possible performance and stability, because 30 of you trying to edit on the network is going to make the network suck. So staying on the local computer, which is the documents folder, not on any of the locations here or on the network, but just in the documents folder, is going to be your best bet for making sure that you have success. So we're in, let's move on from there. So notice that there still says no sequence here, but it does say drop media here to create a sequence. Now, I really, really, really don't like you guys to click and drag media onto this to create a sequence. When you do that, it will do it. It will create a sequence for you. And it will feel like, oh, this is super easy. And it is. But the problem that you run into is twofold. First off, it names the sequence whatever the first thing you drag in there is, okay? And this is very kind of lazy and unintentional, and I want to really discourage you from doing this, because I can't tell you how many times people will turn in assignments that have the clip name of the first clip that they put into the project. So instead, I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to take a moment to go to the History tab to show you that I want to notice that it says overwrite and create. So this is the creation of that of this sequence here, and then import clips. That's where we were before, and actually all the way to the open is what I want to do. So now notice that it takes you all the way to the beginning of that. Actually, I'm gonna move forward. I don't want to. I want to keep those clips. So here we are. We have all of our clips that we've imported. We want to. If I save now and we go to history, notice that I still have them now. But if I close down Premiere and reopen it, it will be gone. So let's say that I wanted to create a sequence the way that Randy wants to create a sequence, and that's going to be by creating it intentionally. There's a couple ways to do it, as you might imagine. You can click on this little looks like a Post-it note with the corner folded up, and if you hover over it, it says New Item. If you click on that, you can choose Sequence. If you choose sequence, it brings up a new sequence dialog, okay? And this is where I really encourage you to use this as your base of operations for creating edits in Premiere. For now, I'm going to cancel out of that and show you another way to do it, which you can also right click or control click or command click in this in the menu or in the import or the project window, sorry, and go to new item and choose sequence again. Same answer there. Or you can go up to the file menu and choose new and come over here and see that it says sequence. Lastly, you can actually just use Command N or Control N on a Windows computer. So if I hold down Command and press N, it brings up that new sequence window. So there's several ways to do it. Choose one that works for you. I usually will use the new icon down here. Mercifully, I think Adobe finally changed their default original preset to be under digital SLR, which is where for a long time it used to be under DV NTSC, and thank God those days are behind us. So digital SLR is a fine place to start in terms of making your edit. Now, the presets that they have are all set as 1080p. If you are wanting to do a 4K edit, you can. I would encourage you for this class to only do 1080p edits, but what you do in your own time is your own business. For this project or for this demo and tutorial, I want to keep the preset as DSLR 1080p 30, which is, if you look under the settings, it's going to tell you is that it's 1920 pixels high by 1080 pixels wide. It has a frame rate not of 30, but of 29.97 frames per second. Now that has to do with kind of history of television, but for what we do in the videos that we create are almost always going to be this frame rate, 2997. So just keep that in mind. The pixel aspect ratio is going to be a perfect square. So every pixel is going to actually be a little square on the screen. And then fields, we're ignoring that because we're doing what's called progressive scan, which is the P in this 1080p. So progressive scan is how we will do all of our edits in the class. The rest of this information you can ignore for now, but the audio rate being 48,000 samples per second is what I want. The color space being BT709 is fine, and the rest of this being as is. If you wanted to make any adjustments to that before we click OK, you can go to settings and you can change any of those settings that were up here. Okay. I notice now that the video previews are rendered in Apple ProRes, which is fine. But all of this information is mentioned in the sequence preset. Before we go to click OK, we want to change the sequence name. Notice that, remember, when we dragged a clip onto the timeline, it created a sequence with the same name as that clip. That is this thing right here. So what's even more annoying is having sequence 01 as the sequence that you create. So just like with the project name and the location that you store it, I want you to choose the name of your project as your sequence name. Okay? So when you do that and click OK, it will now create that project, or it will create that sequence for you. And notice that it lands it in your project pane. It has a special little icon in the corner here that if you hover over it, it tells you it's a sequence. The nice thing is that when you notice this little icon and the name is distinct from all of the other stuff, it's easier to find the sequence in your project. So now we're ready to start editing. Oh my God, all this time, Randy, and we haven't even started cutting anything yet. So here's how I would like to start editing in this, in my edits, is I choose the first shot. Say I wanted it to be an aerial shot. It can be any of these three So I've got one here, this one, this one, and this one. And if you notice that as I move the mouse across, it kind of it's called scrubbing, but it scrubs back and forth over the clip to see what's the look that I want. I want a nice fast-paced, high-energy shot to open up the edit. So I'm going to choose this last one. I'm going to just double-click on it to bring it up into this window here. There we go. Okay. So it brings up into this window the first shot of my video. And so I'm going to just grab this. I think I'll start from the beginning, and but I don't need 7 seconds. Notice that it says it's 7 seconds and 13 frames. I only want 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move the playhead to about 4 seconds, or actually I'm going to move it just one shy of that, 323. And I'm going to hit a marker. So to start, actually, I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to mark the endpoint for at the very beginning of this clip. So by using this little button here, I can actually mark that I want to use all of the media in this particular clip. Now, by default, you always, if you just drag clips from the project onto your timeline, you're automatically using all of the clip. But here's where the editing can be helpful, is that if you know that you don't want to use the very beginning of this clip, maybe say we wanted the clip to start here, you can change the endpoint. Now that these first frames will be ignored when we use this clip. Similarly, if I roll forward and I say, well, actually, I want to go to about there, and I click the next one says mark out, you can come over here. Notice that my time's a little short, so I can actually drag these. If you notice move the mouse to the very edge of those blue brackets, it changes the mouse to this red kind of red bracket, and I can actually drag this to make it as long as I want. So say if I wanted it to be 4 seconds exactly, 4 seconds and 0 frames, this right here is 4 seconds and 0 frames. Now, if I was satisfied that this was the look I wanted to start with, I can do multiple things. I can drag this onto the timeline directly from the project, or from the source pane. I can just click up here on the picture, I can drag it down, and I can drop it in here. Notice that when it says, if for any reason the sequence that you're created is not the same frame rate or frame size as the media that you're creating, it's going to ask you this the first time. It says this clip does not match the sequence's settings. Do you want to change the sequence to match the clip settings, or do you want to keep the existing settings? Now, in this case, I want you to almost always choose the blue button here. Keep the existing settings, because you've chosen the sequence intentionally. And by changing it, you don't know exactly how it's going to change this. Now, I think in this case, it's mostly that the frame rate is different. This sequence, or the sequence's frame rate is 30. Remember, it was the 1080p 30 preset. And this clip here is 24 frames a second. So that frame rate difference could trip things up. So if we change the sequence settings, it will change the sequence settings for the entire thing. So if we click keep the existing sequence settings, it will drop it in here. Notice that there's a couple things that are weird. First of all, this clip is really small. So that was another reason why it was wondering if I wanted to change the sequence settings. This clip is probably 480p, and the sequence is 1080p. So notice that you've got all of this real estate that has no video. Actually, this might even be 320p. So what we can do is actually we can fix that by right-clicking on this and choosing. Actually, no, we can't right-click on that. We have to right-click in here, and it brings up a whole bunch of menu options. But the one that we'll use is called Scale to Frame Size. And when we click that, notice that it will pop and zoom the footage to fill the frame. Now you might look over here and say, Randy, I can barely see that little tiny clip of content in the sequence. Is there any way to make it bigger? And yes, of course, you can use on the keyboard the minus and plus keys to zoom out or in. That's right next to the delete key on or the backspace key on your keyboard. You see there's the minus and the equals or the minus and the plus. You can zoom in by clicking the equals key, and you can zoom out by clicking the minus key. Now you can do that. The other way that you can do it is you can actually, underneath the backspace key is usually a backslash. If you type the backslash key, it will zoom the entire sequence into view. So notice that we've only got one sequence or one clip in the sequence that's 4 seconds long. And so we'll see up here that the timeline is only 4 seconds long. Well, we don't want to do just one clip, so we're going to do. Notice that you can move the playhead, or you can move the playhead by clicking here. Notice that the playhead now shows in this sequence because we have a clip in the sequence. And useful tool is to use the up and down arrows to be able to move the playhead to specific edit points. Now that's only going to work on tracks that actually have this this box highlighted. So this is called track targeting. So if you turn track targeting off, and I'm now hitting up and down, notice that nothing's happening. But if I turn track targeting on, I now can move forward and backward into the sequence. So if you're ever using the up and down arrows to move through a sequence really quickly, you might want to be looking at whether you're targeting the correct tracks to do that. Okay, next, before we move on to the final thing is I want to pick my next shot. And maybe my next shot is going to be this overhead because now that seems to be a little bit closer than the other one that we've got. And notice that it's only 1 second long, or it's 1 second and 2 frames. So I'm going to go ahead and use the whole clip there. This time I'm actually going to, I'm going to select I'm going to hit the down arrow to get my playhead all the way to the end. And instead of dragging content to the timeline, I'm actually going to use these buttons here. So one of them is called insert and the other is called overwrite. And when you do an overwrite, you're basically adding content and obliterating anything that's under the playhead. So if, for instance, if the playhead was here and we clicked overwrite, watch what happens in this time frame right here. You'll see that it replaces the content with that close-up, or that slightly closer aerial. I wouldn't say it's a close-up. Obviously, we don't want to do that, so I'm going to undo that by hitting Command or Control Z. We'll move instead to the end here and actually just click Overwrite. The shortcut for the keyboard would be the period key, but if I click Overwrite, it adds it to the end of the sequence. We could worry about zooming that. I'll go ahead and do that here. Once again, scale the frame size and it will zoom the footage to fit the frame. So that happens in both directions. If you put a 4K clip in a 1080p sequence, you'll be zoomed really big. It'll be oversized, and you can do the same thing to basically scale it down to fit the sequence. And so go through, do a couple more. I say we'll transition now to using the. I want to make sure we get that part of the kid kicking the ball away from the other kid, but maybe I don't need it to be more than 1 second or 1.5 seconds. So I'll pick like 112, which is 1.5 seconds in this frame rate. Notice that if I put the playhead at 112 here, and I select in and out, that it's the length is actually 1 second and 13 frames. That is because we're starting from 0. And when we go here, if we want it to be actually 1 second and 12 frames, the playhead needs to be at 1 second and 11 when you set the out point. And then we'll do, in this case, we're going to come to the end of the sequence. Again, we can use the up and down arrows. And then I'm going to use insert to show that at this point, they'll behave the same. Once again, we'll scale it to frame size. And now you've got a sequence of 3 clips that start to tell a story. We don't know what of, but so that still remains to be seen. So if we use the backslash to show the entire sequence, we've got 1, 2, 3 clips, and they all are arranged in order. If you know that you're going to be editing this way, it helps to know which is your first, second, third, and so on. If you're still a little flexible on that, you can just trim them to size using the source viewer and using the in and out points here to get the length that you want, and then drag them eventually from here into the timeline. So for instance, if I say that I wanted, this is even shorter, this is only 8 frames. Let's say I wanted to use a different part of this clip here. So notice that I've got that in and out point there. Maybe I wanted to come back and use a different part of this at the end of this. And so I can set a different in and out point here. And then when I go to use it, I actually can drag from here into the timeline, and it's only going to show you the frames of this particular part of the set. So it's only going to show you from this endpoint to the end. So notice that so it's different from the beginning. Notice that the first frame here matches that one. So again, we will scale it to frame size. So our first frame here at this point is from this endpoint here, okay? And I'll choose backslash one more time to show you that now we've got a 9-second magnum opus, and there's no audio with any of these, so I'll just play it, and you'll see that we start with this first frame, it goes to the second shot, it cuts to the third shot, and then goes back to the wide shot, the wide aerial shot. So that is how you can do basic editing in Premiere. There's so much more to show you than this, but this is the basics. This gets you started. There's a whole set of things about trimming and how the mouse behaves inside of the timeline. Notice that when you're moving, when you're between clips, you'll see that it's just the normal arrow. But as you hit the edges of things, the pointer changes shape into some different shapes here. And actually, depending on what key you're holding down, whether it's Control or Option or the Command key, you'll see that you change the behavior of the mouse in the sequence. And we'll do those in another video, but I wanted to get you guys started with the basic ways of getting editing started in Premiere. So hopefully you guys have gotten something from this. If you need to try this again, just create another project or add clips to this project and keep on double clicking, bring them into the source viewer, choose an in and out point, and then maybe use insert or overwrite or just drag it onto the sequence from there. Okay, that's it for now. I'll see you in the next video.